a Williams alum. I graduated in '05 and have been since a teacher in schools and special needs classes. I was a Peace Corps volunteer. I've worked in and helped run local youth organizations working with inner city young people. And I've had some other experiences working in business. I was a soccer player and still play a lot of sports. So coaching was a big part of my growing up experience, and actually still something that I do. And after grad school, I started through a fellowship working for the federal government, specifically in what is essentially the homelessness office for the Department of Housing and Urban Development. I had no idea what HUD did before I started working for them. I still don't know anything about mortgage finance, so don't ask me. But what I was able to do is start to work with a program that funds about 80 to 85%, or about 80 to 85% of the dollars that go locally from the federal government to help support shelters, street outreach, these things called transitional, permanent supportive, rapid rehousing. So there's different types of housing interventions and the services that go with them. Some of the infrastructure, so some of the management information systems, the planning and operations for communities to prevent and end homelessness. That's what our office does. We do that through grant programs. We have a big competitive grant where we get applications from both projects and communities every year because they want to make sure their community has the resources to prevent and end homelessness. And then we also have, a smaller formula grant where there is a formula that decides how many dollars go for specific types of projects, much smaller, but still valuable for communities to prevent and end homelessness. And what we try to do is not just provide grants, but through the grant making process, through our rules and regulations, through how we are able to communicate and promote best practices, we actually try to move the field in the direction that we believe and that we think the experts in the field believe will help America prevent and end homelessness. And so what we're really trying to do, and we've had a federal strategic plan in place in 2010, is prevent and end homelessness by 2020. So that's been driving everything our office does. I've had the pleasure of not just doing it at the federal level, but working with local organizations, traveling around a little bit, running pilot projects. We've got a big one that's going on right now. And so for the last 6 years, that's what I've been doing, learned everything I can about how to prevent and end homelessness in the U.S., and I'm happy to share all that with you today.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Matt. Yeah, I think you're going to be an awesome resource for all the students here. But yeah, so for those of you who I haven't met directly, I'm Katie. I am the program coordinator for Kinetic Global. So I'm basically the point person to connect all these chapters and also the issue teams. I'm really excited about some of the things that Kinetic Global has been doing. A lot of you sent in your bi-monthly updates this past week, and the teams are doing really, really incredible research, and I think there's going to be a lot of progress made as this year goes on. And so I definitely look forward to sharing tonight a little bit about some of the research that you all have been up to and what you want to hear from Matt specifically. So yeah, that's a little bit about me. I guess this would be a great time for everyone to quickly introduce themselves and tell me what school you go to and yeah, your role in Kinetic at your school would be awesome. Peter, you can start. Oh, Peter, you can. I'm not getting your audio. Want to give it another shot?
Can you hear me?
Oh yeah, perfect.
Okay, cool. All right, so trying again. My name is Peter Connolly. I'm at Amherst College. I am one of the homelessness team co-leaders. I'm working with Warren, who's also on the call, but he's just texting me now, and he's trying to get his mic and camera to work. And he is one of the 2 founding members of the Amherst chapter of Kinetic here at Amherst College.
Awesome. All right, Zoe, you want to go next?
Yeah. My name is Zoe. I'm one of the co-directors with Emma of the chapter at Penn, and we only have a homelessness team, so this is very exciting.
All right, great. And I know Emma is also trying to get onto the call, and I think we're going to have a few Williams folks join us. Bob, can you hear us?
I can. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Wonderful. Go for it. Yeah. So, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Bob Heckert. I'm getting an echo. Is anybody else, or is that okay?
We can still hear you though. We have the echo, but we can hear you.
Go for it.
I'm on the board of Kinetic Global, and looking forward to working with all of you. It's a privilege and an honor to be working with Jessica and Brian and the other board members, and looking forward to working with you all. My background is law school at Harvard, and then 37 years working at a law firm in New York, doing banking transactions and international financing transactions. Then I retired in 2010 and spent 4 years in Washington, 2 with Senator Gillibrand and then 2 with Senator Levin. And I'm now at Harvard in the Advanced Leadership Program and working on homeless issues. And I met Jessica when she was an intern on Senator Gillibrand's staff. And so looking forward again, as I said, to working with you all.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Bob. Sorry about the echo. The software can be a little finicky sometimes, but great. So I think Zoe, Emma, do you want to introduce yourself as well now that you're on?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep.
I got a little trouble figuring this out. But yeah, so I'm working with Zoe here at Penn, and it's been a slow start, but it's going well right now. Mm-hmm. It's great to meet you all finally.
Yeah, great. All right, so awesome. And then we just have another person that just joined. If you are 18, reveal yourself. Awesome.
Hello.
Hi, do you guys want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. My name is Josie, and I'm from Sophomore College. I'm one of the co-leaders for the homelessness team. My name is Haruka.
Awesome. Okay, so I sent out the itinerary for the call, but what we're just gonna flip it around a little bit. So I know that some of you have to leave early, and so we definitely want to get like the most conversation with Matt that we can. So I know that at Penn you guys have some questions for him. I'm sure like at Aronson Swarthmore as well. So yeah, Zoe and Emma, do you guys have anything directly that you'd like to ask to kind of kick off the call?
Yeah, Emma, should I go?
You can go ahead.
So we had a meeting 2 weeks ago now with a guy who runs a restaurant in Philly that is pay it forward, and they do dollar pizza slices, which is one of the reasons he thinks it works so well is that it's really cheap. And he was not optimistic, or after our meeting with him, optimistic about expanding, because we think it only works well because it's so cheap and helps your food. So we're trying to figure out where to, we were prepared rather than.
I'm having a little trouble. You were breaking up a little bit, so I'm missing a little bit of the last maybe 5 or 10 seconds. No, is it me?
Go for it. Try again.
Did I chat it?
No, you go for it. I think it's working now.
Okay. Are we good?
Yep.
Okay. We want to try to do pay it forward prepared foods and make it healthier than pizza. But we're unsure how to where to go with that. I know it's a really specific question, but if you had any guidance, that would be really helpful.
And just to unpack it a little bit, you guys want to create a pay-it-forward, healthy food option such that for folks who have means, they could pay more or pay what they can so that other folks who, the person behind them, literally, or whoever comes up later, can have a discounted or a free, relatively healthy meal?
Yeah.
Right. And obviously, we're not trying to start a restaurant, so we would be working with restaurants that already exist. Which were also might be a problem because the guy who runs the place that does it in Philly thinks it only works because it's like that's the gimmick of the restaurant. That's why people go there.
Yeah.
And he's not optimistic that it would work in a regular restaurant setting.
Mm-hmm. So I think I have a lot of questions, and I'm going to preface everything I say with, because I'm now in my 30s, I'm starting to get old enough that my riskiness, or my risk aversion rather, is increasing. So
okay.
even if I say things that sound like, yeah, maybe that's not a good idea, sometimes just ignore me and still go ahead and do it. So just going to preface everything I say with that. That's one of the strengths that you guys have, is you haven't learned yet to be as risk averse maybe as I am, even only 10 and 12 and 15 years older than you guys. So I would say, first of all, you want to look at your assumptions. So in starting a place that is healthier than the pizza place, and that is offering food to folks, and that is pay it forward, there are a lot of assumptions that are built in there. Number one, you're assuming that people in general need food. Number two, you're assuming that they need and or want probably both a healthier food option, and number three, that they can't get that anywhere. Need meaning not only do they need it and want it on an individual level, but that they can't get it anywhere else. And you want to think about the competition for that. You're assuming that you're going to get people to come in and actually pay it forward, that buy into it. That part, I think you could probably, through PR and especially in a college environment, you could probably encourage. You could start a thing just with clever marketing and drumming up excitement. But those first assumptions are probably someone that you'd want to talk with. And I'll tell you the first thing that I thought of when you talked about healthy food is sometimes when we talk about folks who are vulnerable or experiencing something that's challenging or difficult, we want to do things for them that is to a higher standard than we would consider for ourselves. And there are some good reasons for that and there's some bad reasons for that. So thinking that we want to create better food options is both a great thing. There's a large conversation around food deserts and healthy food deserts and just having options. But there's also a paternalistic side of that, saying that, well, we don't want you to be eating the bad food because you're in this situation. You should be healthy because it's the healthy thing to do, and so we want you to be healthy. And so I would say, think critically about the assumptions that you're making. If your assumptions tell you, or your still gut tells you that this is still a good idea, and it sounds like there's definitely an idea there, that's exciting. There are communities that have started food-based programming in a number of different ways. Some of them just found an awesome program, whether it's a shelter for adults experiencing homelessness or for youth experiencing homelessness, and out of that, if they didn't already have a kitchen, started a food service, talked with the folks. There was a need, they shared some values, and they started where that is their venue. In other places, it was a bit of a hybrid, and so they worked not only with some organizations serving folks experiencing homelessness, but they also started networking with great chefs and some businesses around, and there was sort of cross-pollination communication. So if you were to make some connections to the local foodie scene, which in Philly is kind of thriving right now, right? There are plenty of foodie people around, and see if there was some interest in seeing where, and let their interest guide you. Oh, I'd love to teach people to make food for a little bit. There's an organization, there's a restaurant called Cafe Reconcile. It's one of my favorites in New Orleans, a favorite example of this, where it is a youth organization that has a resident chef and has chefs, because New Orleans also has lots of celebrity chefs, like rotate through and contribute and keep it vibrant. Now they do like 3 or 4 or 5 different things. So I think it would be, so think through your assumptions, and somehow, if you can, see if you can verify, see if you can test those assumptions, talking to some local homelessness organizations, your continuum of care, going and interviewing some people who are going through that experience, what they want, they need, talking to some students, see if they'd be interested in experiencing that, and then talking to the food makers, the restaurateurs, and both presenting what you're interested in, being excited about it, but then also what are they interested in, how would they like to add value. I don't know, I hope that's helpful.
Yeah, I tried to unmute myself and I uncambered myself. Yeah, I think that's a really good point about the healthy food, because also like what's important is if you're only maybe having one meal a day, you might want it to be really calorie dense.
Right.
So that's something else to think about. Yeah, cool. Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome.
So I guess I have a follow-up question to that, because this is something that I think like a lot of our food insecurity and homelessness teams can think about as an option for them. So after students have done some preliminary research in their communities, what would you say like are the major steps that they should go to? Like, which people are important to reach out to in communities? Are there certain point people, kind of regardless of location, that would be a good person to reach out to?
Yeah, I mean, so in most of the communities we're talking about, either because they're cities or because you're in a progressive college town, there's usually going to be someone working, if not in the exact space that you're working in a parallel space. And for me, that's a really good thing, because if no one's working in that space, to mix and then go in. But usually if people are there, they're there because there's a need for it, right? So it should be, rather than scaring you because there's someone else doing it, it should be validated. So trying to figure out who are the people that are fitting that niche. And so there's a continuum of care in each of your communities. So there is a group of stakeholders that is already in charge of meeting regularly, assessing experiencing homelessness, that is measuring performance over time. It's in charge of evaluating programs. So each of your communities has some type of coalition that we call the continuum of care. They're going to talk to, there are a lot of shelters. Most shelters do some kind of food service. So that would be important. There are also a lot of organizations working in the space, that may serve some folks experiencing homelessness, for folks who are experiencing homeless food pantries that serve anybody who is low income or support with food. Talking to some of the community leaders, whether they're affordable housing leaders, their community coalition networks. These types of folks are kind of eyes and ears on the ground. There's also usually some type of street outreach or frontline working folks. And in every community I've been in, there's one or two or a small handful of people that just know everything about the community. So if you can find that person knows, like, you'll do street outreach with them at 2 in the morning and everybody will know their name and they know where all the nooks and crannies are, and so they really understand it. So identifying who the stakeholders are, and you don't have to spend a lot of time doing that. Do some mapping as a team, figure out a plan to just reach out to them, and then they'll kind of connect you to the other folks. I say you want to take your idea in the most. Are you guys familiar with like lean culture? Rain or nod your head. You've heard of the lean movement? No. All right. So the lean startup movement, which comes out of the Kaizen lean manufacturing movement from Toyota. Anybody studied this in class yet? Sort of, maybe. Basically, what it says is that in business, it is relatively inefficient to spend years and years and years in your laboratory dreaming of the perfect solution and then unveiling it to the public after spending millions and millions and millions of dollars. Because the risk of that failing is really high and you've already invested all of your money into it. So that a better way to do this is do some research, and then can you test your basic idea, which is they call it the MVP, a minimally viable product. So if you can test which are your basic assumptions, is strip it down as much as possible, no technology if you can really strip it down. And what you want to do is you want to test it as quickly as possible and have a system of feedback so you can learn really quickly. people use my, do they use my, do Toyota, is change that we made actually, having us put the engine faster, doing the thing faster, right? And then as soon as you learn, you can make it better and improve it. So you don't spend all your money, put all your, you don't spend all your money doing one thing. What didn't work, and you're like, oh boy, that's it. We'll do something else now. We have no more money, no more energy. So when you go to these communities, you want to try to figure out, and this goes back to the assumptions I was saying. So what are the assumptions you're making about the thing that you're doing, right? That people need it, that people want it, that people will interact with it in a certain way, right? So you should know what those things are. Figure out what the core ones of those things are. And you know that by having these conversations, reaching out to your continuum of care, reaching out to these, the local organizations, the coalitions, affordable housing coalitions, the community coalitions, that go to the homeless shelter, talk to folks who are experiencing homelessness, talk to folks who find that awesome frontline worker. And then once you kind of have your assumption, try it. Figure out an inexpensive way, and that could be your energy, it could be actual money, an inexpensive way to try it. And maybe you have 2 experiments going on at the same time, but not more than that. And then every week or 2 weeks or every month, you maybe change it a little bit. You maybe make an adaptation. You get advisors, you talk with them. So for these, at least the things that you're talking about, that the way of starting to be able to dive in, but not spend 2 years making it perfect before you know if it was even worth it to begin with. That make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Can I ask a second question since Emma has to leave to go to class pretty soon?
Sure.
Okay, that's great. Yeah, no, I'm glad you were able to hop on, Zoe, for some of it.
So the
okay, well, sorry, go for it.
You can say what you have to say. It's a long question.
Oh, I was just going to say, I think that's a really good thing for all of our teams to think about is trying like really small scale and like implementing your idea on a really small scale and then letting it grow. I know that is something that we've had a lot of iterations of Kinetic at Williams and lots of different teams, and our most successful teams have been able to just try to run with their idea and implement it and then let it grow from there instead of trying to change the entire world like with after like planning for months and months and months and months. So I think that will be really, so that's like a really, really good point, and I'm glad you brought that up. But yeah, Zoe, go ahead.
So on that note, a much smaller project that we're still excited about, but is arguably less high impact, and this is already in the works. We're running a tampon drive through campus, which we would then ideally, because it's not a very hard thing to manage once it's up and running, pass off to another group to make it more sustainable. Like this wouldn't be our thing forever. And one of the things that was brought up during some of our calls with local experts is that we could also think about doing other hygiene products, like toothpaste or like shampoo or whatever. Do you see as much value in that? Because we don't want to dilute not our message, but like we don't want to make it too confusing by like asking for everything. But if you think it's really important, like if you have seen that people are really missing like toothpaste, then we'll do it.
Yeah. So there's I just switched over to see if I could look up the name. I'll have to find it for you. There's a wonderful organization in Kansas City that I ran into a few years ago that does exactly that. And so yeah, I mean, I think I would validate that idea locally, right? Maybe your community is weird and they just have a ton of people donating hygiene products. But that like the other more than food, shampoo and soap and deodorant and toothpaste and all of that stuff to take care of yourself is often in high need. School supplies, other types of business supplies, business clothes. There are things that people don't always, all these extra stuff in your life. So food, everybody donates. Kind of regular clothes, everybody donates. They're kind of niche items, and hygiene products in general tend to be in pretty high need.
Okay, cool. So we might run that separately once we figure out the smoothest way to do just tampons. Because that's like, I think an example of what you were just describing is like start small.
Yeah.
And see where we go from there.
Yeah, tampons in particular, all of the specifically women's hygiene products. That I hear that a lot from folks in the field.
Okay, thanks.
That's so awesome. I am really excited to hear how that goes for you all. I guess my follow-up question, and maybe Matt can also talk to this, is speak to this, is what are you all planning? Who are you planning to hand this off to? And if you guys don't have a plan for that, I'm wondering if Matt has an idea of good people to reach out to about that.
Oh, are you asking me or Matt first? Sorry.
I'm asking you.
Oh, I mean, we haven't thought that much about it, but really, we could even hand it off to the shelters themselves, because all that needs to happen is, like, the box needs to be checked. I don't know how often yet, because I don't know how much people are going to be donating, but, like, if the shelter has a car, they could just pick up the stuff. And if not, we were thinking of maybe having, like, this become the thing that some sorority does. Yeah.
Have you asked, so assuming this is something that the shelter wants to do, have you figured out why they don't already do it on their own?
We haven't asked. They were very excited about it. I'm assuming it's a capacity thing. So the shelter that we talked to is in Philly, and they have a specific, like, women's like a bunch of women's programming and stuff, but they're called Prevention Point, and they're mostly heroin help. So, like, they used to be just needle exchange, and now they offer other health services and stuff. So they have a lot on their plate. So I'm assuming, but you're right that I shouldn't assume, but I'm assuming it's a capacity thing.
Yeah, so you'd want to figure out, will that capacity issue still exist when you start it up, so that they'll say, great, we're glad you did this, but we really don't have a staff person to allocate to doing that? Or is it really just the upfront stuff? Or are you guys going to figure out, you guys are like, look, I know you don't know how to do this effectively yet, but not only do we think we have, a good idea for something that will be helpful to folks, but we actually think we have a clever operation, and really you're thinking about the manufacturing chain, so to speak. Like, you got a really interesting process that you think if you can get up running, show them that there's an efficient way to do this, because they don't have the time and energy to start it up, right? They've got their stuff going. If you can start it up and show the press with which they will have the capacity to do that, I don't know, maybe figuring out, like, for the ways that you can create it that they can take over.
Okay. Yeah. Cool. Yeah, that's definitely something we'll think about.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, awesome. Do you guys have any other questions from Ken about some of the projects that you've been working on?
Not specifically about the projects. I think what we've been struggling with is Philly's landscape in particular, because Philly has such high homelessness, and it's a pretty poor city to begin with. So we have been having a bit of a hard time finding an intervention that we think would work to suit Philly. We've been talking to some local experts, and Penn has, like, through Penn's hospitals, there's a lot of people who are doing really good work. But yeah, to be honest, it has been slow just because it's such a complex problem in Philly.
So I only know a little bit of their space because I've never had Philly as an area of focus, but through other folks, I've learned a little bit about the space. And Philly can sometimes act like many other northeastern cities. Basically, what I mean by that is you have a lot of smart people, you have a lot of strong institutions, and sometimes strong institutions with strong type A type people means that those institutions don't work well together. And I think the city, for the last number, I think it's getting a little better, but has really struggled to coordinate and make sure that all of those different organizations are leveraging and their capacity in the best way and as efficient as possible. So what does that do for you guys? I think what that means potentially is there's actually an opportunity for the young college energy, we're going to do something, for it to be like a really easy, for all those entrenched interests that are traditionally doing like this, that they won't see you like that. So finding where their needs are, you guys may be actually be in a unique space, whether it was starting something big like a Y2Y or other initiatives, for actually infiltrating that space. So there is a continuum of care. There are folks there that are in charge of doing that coordination, collaboration. Hasn't been super effective in Philly. You guys actually may find that folks are really interested in you taking things on because of that environment. That was a little abstract. That's only a little bit of what I know about Philly.
Yeah,
but knowing that perspective may be helpful as you engage those folks.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that's like very resonant. But we've talked to a good number of people in like these like really smart, big, like strong institutions at this point. And so far we haven't gotten anyone. What I've been hoping for is that someone might say, oh, like this thing, like if someone was willing to do this thing, that would be awesome. And then we could be like, yes, that's us. But that hasn't happened yet, which is why we've kind of made up our own projects. But yeah, I don't really know who to reach out to next in institutions, because like obviously what makes the most sense is through Penn. We found a lot of people, and I'm involved with the School of Public Health. But yeah, like if we can find someone to give us a project to take on, obviously we'd be thrilled.
Yeah, I mean, so if you look at the Y2Y experience, which the Cambridge shelter that Sarah and Sam started, I think they go.
Hello, this is Bob. Can I jump in here a sec?
Yeah, of course.
Here at Harvard, at the Y2Y homeless shelter that we started up in December, we found that the local Sheraton Hotel has once a year they designate a shelter that they'll support, and they produce through their employees, help them, and they donate a whole bunch of pre-assembled packages of these types of things, particularly shampoo, deodorant, and things like that, toothpaste that they would put in the hotel rooms to a shelter. So you might, if there's a Sheraton in particular in Philly, which I assume there is, or other hotels, maybe you could get them to contribute some of their products to what you're doing.
Yeah, that's a really good idea. I know there's a Sheraton at Penn, or like right off Penn's campus. Is this something that Sheraton does like nationally? Or just?
That was my impression, but it might be just this one. But it's something that maybe you could take it to hotels and suggest that they do that for you.
Yeah, that's a really cool idea.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Sorry, I have to go. I have a meeting at 45. But thank you so much. It was great to meet you, and Zoe will give me the rest of the talk.
Sounds great.
Thank you. Bye.
Yeah, I think happened with Y2Y. The connecting with the more institutional partners happened later. That if there isn't that immediate, we can help you. We can from the more institutional folks right away, going to local businesses, and then within in that example, you leveraging the power of the school environment to rather than tell the validity of your concept or of your idea, will maybe give you the momentum for some of those more institutional partners to give you some trust and let you kind of play in their space, in their sandbox.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree.
Awesome. Do you all have any questions over at Amherst or Portsmouth?
So with us, we've actually been having a little bit trouble finding where to focus. Especially like just like looking how homelessness is like a cycle, and we didn't know which part of the cycle to target, or if it's better to, let's say, focus on finding housing, like prevention, or helping the current population. And so we were wondering if you have any advice on finding, focusing in.
Yeah, so there's a lot of need, and there's need on both ends. Where the federal government, is currently focusing our attention on at a higher level is serving as fast as we can those with the highest needs and the most vulnerable. And right now, because in every community around the country, there are folks who are living on the streets, there are folks who are living in dangerous places, there are folks who are in emergency shelters. A lot of focus has been on interventions for folks who are already in the throes of those experiences. We are starting to expand how we think about prevention, and we're doing that in kind of two different ways. In the family space, we've been expanding the tool that we call rapid rehousing, which is really, it can be used as an early intervention tool. So as soon as you experience a housing crisis, let's get you out of that crisis as quickly as possible into a place where you hold the lease. We will cover most, if not all, of the rent to begin with, and with services. Oh, it says that, can you guys still hear me?
Yep.
All right, the screen said the connection was down. And then we'll taper those services and that rental subsidy down over time. So in the family space, it can be an early intervention, or it could be you're at imminent risk of homelessness, and let's see if we can get you, meaning you're going to be evicted. So this is the secondary prevention as opposed to primary prevention, which is way upstream. So the secondary prevention efforts, when there is a crisis is imminent, are there different things that we can do? Provide you with rental subsidies, get you in a new place. And then further down the road, there are things for families. There are other types of costs that can be taken care of. There's other types of training and services, whether it's financial training and savings accounts. There's something called the Family Self-Sufficiency Program, FSS, that's run by HUD that does 5 years worth of financial coaching and training, but also has a matching savings account so that folks who are living in subsidized housing can not only learn how to maintain their books and have savings, but also they leave with a decent amount of money in their savings account. And then in the children's space, in the youth space, we've also been learning a lot more about prevention. And so in the LGBTQ space, for example, we've been doing a lot of cultural and linguistic competency training in 2 pilot projects, one in Houston, one in Cincinnati. And so it's working with the community that says, okay, we know that in this case, there is a much higher incidence compared to their percentage of the population of young people who are identified as LGBT who are experiencing homelessness. What are the causes? So there's some research out there that says that the vast majority of them didn't feel safe in the home, were exited either by their families or because of a family rejection. There's a lot of trauma and other things in the home. So can we make sure that not just the homeless service providers, but also the school important works have the competency, right? So how to speak and communicate folks, they've trained and developed skills so that we can prevent because we've identified one of the causes is family rejection. So can we limit that cause? And for young people in general, family work done to find people.
Sorry, we can't hear you.
Hey, Matt, can you repeat the last 10 seconds of what you just said? Sorry, guys. The software can be a little tricky sometimes.
It's okay.
Okay, well, while Matt reconnects his feed, I'd love to hear, a little bit about like what you guys have, who you have talked to so far, or like what parts of the cycle have you looked at?
So far we have done basic research into a lot of the aspects of homelessness. For example, we looked at homelessness and mental illness or substance abuse, and like more specifically, like what are the causes and what the local organizations around this area are currently doing. We also looked at homelessness and the youth, and some of the and we've also contacted the organizations that help youth and
No, it's working.
Right. But so far we haven't really been able to focus on one specific area.
Right. And that's totally fine. Like, this is the research phase still. So just trying to collect as much information as possible right now, like reaching out to different parts of your communities and really tackling those different parts of the cycle within homelessness, I think like is awesome. And yeah, I think, okay, great. Matt's hopping back on. But I think one thing to think about is like where you all can be the most impactful. And I think that was like kind of what your question was from that, but I'm like definitely curious to hear what he said about that. And awesome, you're back.
Hi guys. I think I was talking to myself for a while. I don't remember where I left off, but so yeah, there's I think I was talking about like discharge planning, and so working with institutes of justice, so folks don't leave those places into homelessness, jails, juvenile justice facilities, etc. Same thing with foster care, program with foster care young people to make sure that they are ready when they leave. They have a plan and resources to not experience homelessness. So those are some of the spaces that you can think about. It's really about figuring out what your community needs.
Hmm. Yeah, while you were off, Matt, we chatted a little bit about like what specifically they had looked into, and I guess you can share that with Matt. And also, like, I think the big question that I've gotten from a lot of teams is like, where do you think the most impactful work is that a college student can do in homelessness? And like, maybe that changes across communities. I'm not really sure, but yeah, I'm really curious what your thoughts are on that. And you all can definitely just like give them the quick bullets of who you've reached out to and what you've done kind of in your first few months of being part of Kinetic.
Yeah. Is he still
Matt, can you still hear us? I have to say, oh no. Okay, hang on, we'll make it worse. Warren, are you still there?
Yep, I'm here.
All right, well, we're just gonna, okay, Matt just chatted me, he's gonna reconnect, and then we're gonna give this a try one more time, but don't worry, Warren, we're not gonna leave you out. Okay, Matt is joining.
Total disaster. So sorry.
No, it's totally fine. It's the software. But yeah, so yeah, feel free, you guys can ask your questions really quick. And I just got a question in from one of the Amherst people that's on the call as well, so we can talk about that, and then talk about Lauren, and then we won't keep you past 9, Matt, I promise.
No worries. No.
So do you guys want to? Do you have any other questions for Matt?
Us?
Mm-hmm.
Oh. Do you want to well, we're looking at a few things, and some of our members actually contacted a few of the organizations, and it was a bit interesting, some of the things that they said. Like, one of them said how one of the main problems that they saw was that they don't know the work that's going on with
the other organizations nearby, and so there's like this lack of communication between organizations. So that was one of the problems they saw. And then also another point that another organization brought up, that they said their problems that they actually don't get enough of the voice of the people who are homeless. Like, they don't talk enough to them, or they're not in contact with them to know what exactly they need, which I thought was pretty interesting. But like, those are two of the main problems that we saw with a lot of the groups that we've contacted so far.
Yeah, no, that's terrific, and I hope I don't cut out before I can tell you this. So one of the things we've been thinking about recently is this concept of youth navigators, and there was a report done recently in the youth homelessness space, which basically said that the local liaisons, they're actually staff at each school, in each district, and sometimes within each school, who are responsible for being the point of contact for young people experiencing homelessness in the school. And the report, this is by one of the think tanks in DC that I'll remember later on, basically said they provide tremendous value, but because of the turnover and the lack of resources, these folks don't have the capacity to, keep tabs on all of the different programs and know who's out there and do that collaborating and coordinating. And so one of the things that we were trying to do, so this is a variation on some of the concepts we were talking about, is could we get AmeriCorps volunteers, or in this case, college students, to provide that navigation, right? Because programs change all the time. So to help those folks, either the local liaisons in the schools or the other the homelessness services providers and housing providers, maintain that network of providers. So not just both having the map, but also knowing who the points of contact are and making those connections. Something else that we really wanted communities to do is make sure they have advisory boards. So a lot of the work I do is in youth homelessness, making sure they have a youth advisory board. So helping to coordinate that so there is youth voice intentional and active throughout all of the decision-making processes. Something that's really critical, really important. And doing that for older people experiencing homelessness, really just as important. So yeah, I think both of those things, just to validate what you were hearing, are things that I've heard, is the capacity to maintain those networks super important. Often folks don't have it, and that's definitely a role I think that you guys could help play. The school piece is definitely an area that I know really needs it, but reaching out to the continuum of care to see if there's a role that you could play there, really important. And then yeah, definitely in doing projects. So you could think about it as putting together boards or making sure you're connecting in service of those institutions. You could also do their projects for your community and just making sure people are aware of the voice. You could take stories. You could go out and do a stories project with folks who are experiencing homelessness in the area and come up with your findings and present it to folks, right? And you could do that as a written medium. You could do that as a photo medium. You could create a space where folks can do about in service institutions and organizations. It's also providing a service to those. Again. Are you guys still there?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
All right. I can't see you anymore, but as long as you can hear me. Did some of those things make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, can you repeat one more time about that?
One more time?
Yeah, the last like 30 seconds or so.
Sure.
The meeting is
So recap to say that serves providing either for the organization, the care for one specific organization, or for the school, definitely needed, and folks awfully don't have it. So that's either for those organizations or specifically for the folks who are expected to connect them to all the pieces is something where you guys could play a role. And then, there are other ways for you guys to, so that and the Youth Advisory Board or some creating a board or a place where folks can have a voice and influence all the policies. At the same time, there are lots of ways on the ground that you guys can help tell the story of folks who are experiencing homelessness by doing all these projects, either having folks like going out and recording stories from folks, in written long form. You can do projects where help the folks tell their projects where young people do that. You can do it through comics, you can do it through art, you can do it through the mediums, and those things are both valuable to the folks as gathering information and providing those back to the programs and institutions.
So since there are 5 minutes left, I just want to make sure that Amherst also has time to ask a couple of questions. So Warren, do you have anything that you would like to ask Matt about? I have an email here that Peter is still on the call, who you met earlier, Matt, and he has a question here, but I wanted to give Warren a chance to ask one first if you have a question.
Yeah, no, Peter and I were just going to ask that one question. So you can say it if you want, or I can phrase it.
Yeah, no, you go for it. Go for it.
In our research as a team, we basically discovered lots of gaps that could be filled, and those gaps have to do with funding. They have to do with just there's not enough money here, or this money isn't going to the right place, and stuff like that. And so when we get to those kinds of points, we tend to get stuck. We tend to not know what to do. And so our question was basically, is there anything you can suggest that we can take in action on those kinds of gaps? Or do we basically have no choice but to kind of move on and take another approach?
Yeah, so it's an interesting question, and I know we only have a couple minutes. I'd be happy to talk more about funding streams and how the system is funded in general with you guys offline. So I think there are a couple things. One is to figure out, is it that they don't have money and capacity to do it on their own, but you guys can provide that capacity, meaning you have free labor, you have, you add your intellectual resources, you guys could, do drives, to get them resources. Yeah. So is it a resource problem you're trying to solve? Or is it, the solutions are, we need more permanent housing vouchers in our area, we need to construct new homes, which is also a problem. And then that's interesting, you'd have to really get into, bringing in the financing experts and talking with, that you could have advocacy campaigns with your public housing authority that says, hey, public housing authority, you should have a preference for folks experiencing homelessness, so that if they're experiencing homelessness and you're on a wait list that takes 1,000 years to get a voucher, you should go to the front of the line because you're most in need versus someone who doesn't. So there are advocacy campaigns that you could do. There's also, identifying a project, raising community awareness, finding philanthropy to sign on to it. As long as it's kind of cutting edge and something is exciting, you might be able to get enough support to fund it. So it kind of depends which of those or other domains you're needing that resource.
All right, cool. Thank you.
Yeah, all of these communities are debt funded. They all need way more resources. They all need money. So part of our job is figuring out how can we both add our resources of value, how can we make these systems more efficient, help them run more efficiently, and then at the end of the day, how do we find clever ways to finance, fundraising new money to build the capacity that.
Right. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Matt, for sticking with it even through some of the internet craziness. But yeah, it was great. I know a bunch of different students had a chance to hop on, and so even the students who couldn't see their video feed, there were a lot of people who called in as well. So yeah, I think this was super helpful. And again, this recording will go online so students can watch it who might not have been able to make the call. But yeah, I really appreciate you taking your time to chat with us.
It was my pleasure. Thank you for having me. And you had a group of wonderfully intelligent and energetic folks. So I hope they will take that energy and do some pretty cool stuff. I'm happy to be a part of it.
Yeah, great. Well, thanks so much, and have a great time at your parents' house.
Thanks. Bye, guys.
All right. Bye, everyone.
Bye. Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.